Hello, and welcome to the Circuit Breakers interview series. I'm your host, Steve Semler, and today I'm joined by Brian Slipka, who's the CEO and founder of the True North family of companies, a family of businesses with a non-traditional approach to growth, success, and preserving a legacy. And I'm really interested to hear kind of the leadership philosophy and how you managed to do that scaling across many different businesses. So, Brian, thank you for coming on. Would you like to kick us off with just a little bit about who you are and what you do, please?
Sure. Well, thanks, Steve, for having me. I appreciate it, and glad to spend a few minutes with your listeners and watchers of this. Yeah, I mean, my story, for those of you who have heard of me or know of me in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis marketplace area, is I had a very normal business career, but fairly successful business career in my 20s and 30s, moving through different corporate ranks, having some high profile opportunities, sales leadership, sales management, revenue officer roles, leading up business units. And through that time, I've always been entrepreneurial, always had some side investments and that sort of thing. But what really started to emerge is this desire to separate myself from the world of just the corporate nonsense and kind of being a drone, if you will, and living a life of impact and influence, right? And letting my light shine as a leader, as a business leader, harnessing all of my acumen that I'd developed over years of professional experience and at bats, traveling the country many times over, a lot of nights away from my family, and really harnessing all of that so that I could let my light shine with True North. So dating back to really 2013, when my dad passed away of cancer, and really challenged me on, man, Brian, what are you chasing professionally? Because you're working way too hard for a corporation that's never really going to care as much about you as you do about them. And why don't you pursue something more of more impact and influence? And he just asked me the question, Steve, what are you chasing? So it was in the wake of that. I still had the day job for another 4 or 5 years, but I started buying small businesses, and that's really led to what is now the True North family of companies. And it's been quite a journey, a lot of ups, a lot of downs. But I think what's real is the impact and influence that we have had on people, on our culture, on the folks that have worked with us, for us, alongside us, and watching how we lead, and basically allowing True North to be able to scale for our impact and influence that we desire.
Yeah, I mean, and you're talking about the "what are you chasing" question is kind of the spark to get you started there. Um, how did you decide to I guess get into multiple businesses as opposed to just starting with one and then sticking with that? What was the impact coming up through there?
Yeah, well, great question. And in my 20s and 30s, when I was having the day job, just like a lot of other folks that have been successful and they have a little bit of liquidity or disposable income, I was investing in real estate and angel investments and building up some passive income and all of that sort of thing. And that was all fine and good. But what really triggered the desire for what became the True North family of companies is really being actively involved in businesses and actually being the leader to make these critical decisions to have strategic growth. And I just felt like, if I'm going to invest in something, the other thing is I made a lot of investments during the recession in angel companies and ultimately lost a lot of money. So I learned through my failures. I mean, if I'm being brutally honest with everybody, and that's how most of us learn, right? And so, I made a lot of these angel investments, lost some money, had a lot of lessons learned. And it just made me realize, if I'm going to invest in something and put hard-earned capital to work that I've, stored labor that I've earned, I want to have that decision-making authority, or at least a strong voice. And so for me, it was really buying controlling interest in these small little businesses. Yes, I would have an operating partner that did a lot of the day-to-day and would lead the company, but really it was me being able to help control the decision-making. And with that, it gave me that platform. And so eventually, as I kept buying companies, I had to quit the day job. I had to go really focus on running those companies full time. And as we continue to grow and scale, really embrace the methodology of creating systems and processes to be able to scale even more. And we can talk about that more in detail. But But that's really the how it all came to be.
Yeah. One thing that the Focal Point folks and I stress, and has really been a key piece for a long time, is systems can set you free as long as you know what you're doing with them. And that's where
Hmm.
that expert judgment from having been in the trenches and done a lot of things that you're bringing to it seems to really pay off for folks.
For
Uh,
sure.
with with that in mind, what were some of the bigger challenges earlier on as you're kind of adapting to that kind of decision maker with operating partner model?
Well, so I'm going to speak from a position of humility, because I think that's again where you learn through adversity. So if you date back to the early years of True North, when I still had a day job, I had operating partners that were running the business. I was more of a spiritual leader and more of an encourager, because I was busy working my day job, right, and leading in this case a business unit at a publicly traded company, right. So I didn't have the time to get in the weeds, but I did learn how to encourage, equip, collaborate, uplift, and started to develop some scale, and started to develop consistencies both with my day job of how I wanted my leaders to behave, and then what I expected in the True North companies. So when I did leave and pursue True North full time and continue to acquire companies, there's a framework that we started to deploy that has to this day worked fairly well around creating systems and processes, and just continue to move forward and creating a structure that allows for growth. But where I was going with the humble part is, in 2000, or really when COVID hit, I felt really inclined to go. I mean, because some people just curled up in a ball, didn't leave the house, and weren't willing to do anything, and were almost paralyzed from it. And others, like I'd say myself, got out there and actually took advantage of everybody else's idleness, and we ran laps around people. I mean, we actually, take advantage is the wrong phrase, but more like we moved, we acted, and I think that we were rewarded for that. Where that became slippery slope and danger and borderline reckless is, we acquired a lot of companies, and there was a moment in time where my growth was more important to me than being excellent and preserving the disciplines of what got me where I was, right. And so what happened is I made a few missteps with some of our acquisitions. In other words, everything from me being speeding through due diligence, allowing certain exceptions to things that I normally would not have allowed or wanted to pursue, right. And I think that's one of the important lessons is just this, knowing who you are, and not deceiving yourself by the smallness of your compromises, because those smallness of your compromises become big implications downstream. And certainly that's where True North has stumbled at times. And we've had a ton of success, don't get me wrong, but we've also stumbled because we've been borderline reckless, a little bit too aggressive. And I think that's the humility in me saying that is I've learned, and I'm always learning. And I think that's it's made me do, though, Steve, is surrender selfish ambition. So I've been spending a lot of time talking to my teams about this. How do we all surrender selfish ambition? In other words, thinking about myself, or thinking about like what's in it for me. You don't surrender ambition. You still have a growth mindset. You still want to expand, but you surrender the selfish ambition. C.S. Lewis once said, I mean, this is a phrase I love. It's not that the exceptional person thinks less of themselves. They actually have a very high esteem of themselves, right? They just think about themselves less. All right. I mean, their thoughts aren't obsessed with what's in it for me. Their thoughts aren't obsessed of how this is going to help me. Their thoughts are on others and on the team. And I think had I done a better job of that over the last few years, I say that humbly. I've done a good job in a lot of areas, but that's where there's some serious lessons learned for the listener, and like for any business leaders. Like, boy, what a powerful message. And I've learned both, in a good way and a bad way on that whole surrendering selfish ambition. And so really now fast forward to today, and we're taking a much more steadied approach. We're focusing on others first. We're letting things come to us more naturally. It doesn't mean we don't have a growth mindset. We definitely are pursuing growth, but it's in a little bit different way. And I think that's why people call time and experience wisdom. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah. I've got a business partner who's an accountant in Australia. And one of his favorite phrases is, "You're never going to go broke by helping people." So putting that
powerful.
service mindset, yes, I'm going to succeed by helping other people, and that'll just drag me along. But I do have to have the business mindset there. I do have to have the strategic piece as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, for sure. In my True North M&A office, we're an intermediary, and we help business owners transition their life's work. Right, you walk in the front office to the right. We have on the wall we have help people and successful follow. In other words, just focus on helping people. Successful follow. Much to your business partner's comment, I mean, you aren't going to go broke helping somebody, right? I mean, and having that spirit of servant leadership, which is a buzzword, but if applied appropriately, is so incredibly transcendent and powerful. And that's really what we strive for at True North. And we don't always do it, but we strive for it, and we continue to get better every day.
Excellent. Yeah. One of the things that I build into courses and coaching for newer leaders who are kind of just coming into a leadership role or taking on a big role is that success is going to come from you making your team successful, from making your people successful. So to do that, you have to figure out, what does success look like, for us as a team? How do you communicate that to people? How do you know what's going to make them successful? And then you have to pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Well said. I mean, and the one thing I would add to that comment, Steve, is that it's a daily occurrence. I mean, I think there's leaders, and myself included, I've been guilty of this, where I think I've arrived. And I think I'm there, and then I'm doing whatever it is I'm doing. I mean, frankly, you listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, where a lot of people will be like, I was like this, and now I'm like this, and it's all great. And I think, and by the way, there's powerful messages there, and there's a lot to take away and learn, right? I think one thing I would amend that or add to that is I'm learning, right? Like we've never quite arrived. There's a sanctification element. I'm a very faith driven person, right? Faith's a big part of my life, big part of our companies. And frankly, I mean, like, we still have that sin nature in us. Like so how do we continue to get better every day? We've never arrived and can shout from the rooftops, "We've arrived." The brutal reality is we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting better. And I think even that mindset of fosters the right act, the right things. It fosters humility. It fosters, not getting, as my dad would say, bigger than your britches, right? All of those characteristics I think are super important for people, as they realize success. As a sales manager, I would always tell the sales reps, this is back earlier in my career, I'd be training these guys, or I'd be on the road with them. I'd tell them that the hardest part isn't achieving success. Like actually achieving success in some ways is the easy part. The hard part, or the more complex part, is surviving success and doing it again, and over and over and over. The consistency of it. I mean, how many folks have we seen, like, for lack of a better way to describe it, are one-hit wonders, right? They work hard at something, they achieve it, they high five each other, they take their victory laps, and that's great. You celebrate success, but okay, now go do it again, like, or do it in another area of life. To me, that's the sanctification, the growth process. Like, we've never arrived. So every day it's like, what's new?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And that speaks to the systems and processes piece too, because that's going to help you to go into the new area, to go to the next level, to get the next market, to do the next thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, let me pull down here to ask you what advice that you would have, just like the top two or three things for folks who are aspiring entrepreneurs or who are relatively new and kind of getting stuck. What are the kind of advice for making themselves successful?
Yeah, again, great questions. I mean, I think we talked about a couple of them, that staying hungry, staying hungry and humble. And I think so. That's very powerful, right? I think the other element is uh, being able to distinguish when you're trying to force something or when it's time for something, right?
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
again, there's a distinction for where you're trying to force something or when it's time for something. And I'll give you like a simple example. Just this morning with the finance company I'm involved with, we're going through some decisions in the business, and we're trying to discern: are we trying to force this to happen, or is it really time for it to happen? And I think the latter is where the wisdom is, right? Where I've gotten into trouble is when I've tried to force something to happen because it's a big. It might be for all the right reasons, because we've rationalized. Okay, this makes sense. This is what I wanted to do. All this, this is one of my goals I set. So it could be for all the right reasons, but are you forcing it to happen? And that's a cautionary tale, right? And then the other thing is just this mindset of, and this is more of a, I'm a big John Gordon. John Gordon's a good friend of mine. He's written, 16 or 17 now bestsellers. The Energy Bus is what he's known for, but he's got a lot of other books. In fact, I'd recommend everybody read The One Truth. I mean, I got done reading that for like the third time. I mean, John's a great friend of mine, but The One Truth talks about, and all of John's books talks about just this positive energy and this
Mhm.
oneness versus separateness. And I think this mindset as a business leader of we don't have to. And that, because that emits positive sort of, vibes first and foremost. But the other thing it does is you aren't fueled on drama or stress. You're fueled on positive energy. When you're fueled on stress, in other words, I have to get this done. That like there's a shelf life to that. There's a
Mhm.
burnout and a rust out to that. When you get to do something, Lord willing, as long as you're healthy, you can do it indefinitely and you don't run out of gas. And so, just how as a leader can you promote a culture of I get to instead of I have to? And I think those are powerful principles that are anecdotal and are qualitative, but are extremely relevant, if, as any business leader knows, in running their companies.
Absolutely. And I've been doing work with positive intelligence. In fact, I've been doing classes and building that into leadership programs where we've even got the research science behind it too. So that's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a super important element that I think is going to be even more critical in leadership coaching and consulting over the next 10 or 20 years. So for you to be doing that now is way to go, because I just think the return on investment around that, like you said, the science proves it, but the return on investment for the business leader is
Hmm.
profound. And and, uh, and it, but it really takes the business leader being intentional about their thoughts and about their words. And again, it's qualitative. It's not lipstick on a pig. It's not like a lot of naysayers will say, well, Brian, you're trying to fake it to, no, it's real. It's got to come from you. It's got to be core. But how do you train your brain and train your decision making and your leadership to having a get to instead of have to mindset? I'm telling you that, just like I'm telling all the listeners, because I'm still working on it, right? I need to tell myself that every day, but it really is transcendent, from an impact standpoint with your people.
It absolutely is. Yeah. And for those, I'll kind of wrap it up here. But for those who are curious about exactly how to do that, because we have ways to be able to get yourself to open up those possibilities and be able to get your brain working in that fashion that are actually pretty easy. But that piece between easy once and easy day after day is a real catch. So happy to
Yeah,
help folks with that. So
yeah.
thank you for your time today, Brian. I really appreciate it. Great meeting
Steve,
you.
thanks for having me, Steve. Appreciate it. And so much to unpack. We could have talked for hours.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for those folks watching, when you're faced with challenges in your business, consider these tips. Consider what Brian's been able to accomplish, and remember that you've got a long way to go, but At the same time, you've come so far already. Use these pieces of advice, use these tips, and feel free to contact me, Steve Semler at FocalPoint Business Coaching and LearningSim, helping techies be great leaders, helping make leaders successful. So look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thank you.